I wore that dress to prove I was invisible to him. What I didn't expect, my billionaire husband losing his mind when every other man in the room couldn't look away. He'd ignored me for 2 years straight, barely looked up from his phone when I walked into a room. But the second another man wanted me, he became someone I didn't recognize, someone possessive, someone who suddenly remembered I existed. And that's when I realized the most painful truth of my life. He never loved me. He just hated the idea of losing his prize. If you've ever felt invisible to someone who should love you most, this story will hit different. Stick around until the end, because the karma that comes around? Chef's kiss. And hey, if your team know your worth, smash that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to see how this plays out. My name is Diana, and I used to be someone. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. Before I became Mrs. Christopher Westwood, I was Dr. Diana Mitchell, a pharmaceutical researcher working on breakthrough pain management treatments. I had colleagues who respected me, research that mattered, a future that belonged to me. Then I met Christopher at a medical charity fundraiser, and everything changed. He wasn't like the other wealthy donors who showed up for photo opportunities and tax write-offs. Christopher actually listened when I explained my work. He asked questions that showed he understood what I was talking about. He was brilliant, ambitious, and he looked at me like I was the most fascinating person in the room. When he asked me to dinner, I said yes without hesitation. When he asked me to marry him 8 months later, I said yes again. When he asked me to take a step back from my career while he expanded his real estate empire internationally, I said yes one more time. That last yes cost me everything. 2 years into our marriage, I lived in a penthouse that felt like a museum. Beautiful, expensive, cold, and empty. Christopher was never there. Always at property viewings, always at business dinners, always at galas with investors I'd never met. When he was home, he was somewhere else entirely. I'd try to tell him about my day, about the article I read, about anything really. And he'd give me that distant smile and say, "That's great, honey. Can we talk later?" Later never came. I remember our anniversary 3 months ago. I'd planned everything, made reservations at the restaurant where he proposed, bought a new dress, spent hours getting ready. I sat at that table alone for 40 minutes before his assistant called to tell me he was stuck in negotiations in Singapore. The jewelry arrived the next day by courier, a diamond bracelet that probably cost more than most people's cars, with a card that said, "Sorry I missed it. You understand." But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how the man who once drove 3 hours just to bring me coffee during a late research session couldn't remember the day he married me. I stopped cooking his favorite meals because he never came home to eat them. I stopped asking about his day because his answers were always the same one-word responses. I stopped reaching for him in bed, and then we stopped sharing a bed altogether. He said it was because his schedule was erratic, and he didn't want to wake me. The truth was simpler and more painful. He didn't want to be near me. My mother called one Tuesday afternoon while I was staring at my reflection in our bathroom mirror, barely recognizing myself. She asked if I was happy, and I lied. I said everything was fine, that Christopher was just busy building something important. After we hung up, her words from years ago echoed in my head. "Baby, a man who wanted you will never make you question if he still does." I was questioning everything. Then came the call that changed it all. Not from Christopher, of course. From his assistant, a efficient woman named Patricia, who managed his life like a military operation. "Mrs. Westwood, I'm calling to confirm your attendance at the annual Westwood Foundation Gala on Saturday evening. Your hair and makeup team will arrive at 3. The dress code is black tie formal. Mr. Westwood will meet you there as he's coming directly from a site inspection." It wasn't an invitation. It was an appointment. I was a calendar entry, a box to check, a prop needed for the happily married billionaire image. I hadn't been to a public event with Christopher in 8 months. I knew exactly what this was. Optics. His publicist probably reminded him that a billionaire real estate mogul looks more trustworthy, more stable, more human, with a wife on his arm. And I was supposed to show up, smile pretty, play the role, and disappear back into my golden cage afterward. That's when something inside me cracked open. I was tired, tired of being invisible, tired of shrinking myself, tired of waiting for crumbs of attention from a man who promised me everything and gave me nothing but loneliness. If I was going to be invisible anyway, I decided, let me be invisible on my own terms. I went shopping that Friday, and for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't shopping for Christopher's approval. I wasn't thinking about what he'd like, or what would photograph well, or what fit the image of Mrs. Christopher Westwood. I was thinking about what made me feel like Diana again. That's when I found it. An emerald green dress that hugged every curve, that showed off the body I'd been hiding under oversized sweaters and safe, boring clothes. It was bold, it was beautiful, it was me. My best friend Tasha FaceTimed me from the dressing room. "Girl, if he doesn't see you in that," she started. But I cut her off. "That's the point, Tasha. I need to see myself again. I've spent 2 years trying to be whatever he needed, and he still doesn't see me. So tonight, I'm dressing for me." When I looked in that mirror, wearing that dress, I saw someone I'd almost forgotten. Someone powerful. Someone worth knowing. Saturday evening arrived like a storm on the horizon. Christopher barely glanced at me when I got into the car. He was reviewing contracts on his tablet, his jaw tight with whatever stress he carried that never included me. "You look nice," he said without looking up. "The way you'd compliment a stranger's shoes in an elevator. Nice." 2 years of marriage reduced to nice. The gala was everything I expected. A ballroom full of wealthy people networking, making deals, and pretending their champagne conversations were genuine friendships. Christopher introduced me exactly once. "This is my wife, Diana," to a group of investors. And then he was gone, absorbed into conversations about property values and market trends and things that apparently mattered more than the woman wearing his ring. I stood by the bar, counting the minutes until I could leave, when a voice beside me said, "You look like someone counting down to an acceptable escape time." I turned to find a man in his early 40s with kind eyes and a genuine smile. "Donovan Hayes," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Art collector, reluctant philanthropist, and fellow prisoner of these mandatory social obligations." For the first time in months, I laughed, really laughed. We started talking, and it felt like breathing after being underwater. He asked about my background, and when I mentioned my pharmaceutical research, his eyes lit up. "Wait, you're that Diana Mitchell? I read your paper on non-opioid pain management alternatives. That was brilliant work. Someone remembered me. Someone saw me as more than just a billionaire's accessory." We talked about art, about science, about the things I'd given up, and whether it was possible to get them back. Donovan wasn't flirting with me. He was just treating me like a person, like someone worth listening to, like I mattered. He maintained eye contact, laughed at my jokes, asked follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. It was such a simple thing, being seen, but I'd forgotten what it felt like. I didn't notice Christopher watching us at first. I was too caught up in the first meaningful conversation I'd had in what felt like forever. But then I felt it, that prickling awareness of being observed. I glanced across the room, and there he was, staring at us with an expression I'd never seen before. His conversation had stopped mid-sentence. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were fixed on Donovan's hand, resting lightly on my arm, as he told a story about a disastrous gallery opening. Christopher's entire demeanor changed. He excused himself from his group and started moving through the crowd toward us, not walking, stalking. When he reached us, he grabbed my elbow with a possessiveness that made me flinch. "Diana, we need to leave. Now." I was genuinely confused. "But your speech isn't until 9:30. You're supposed to—" "Now," he repeated through gritted teeth, already pulling me away. He offered the coldest of apologies to Donovan and practically dragged me through the ballroom, past the staring guests, out to where our car was waiting. The moment the car door closed, he erupted. "Dad, what the hell was that, Diana? Are you trying to embarrass me? Do you know who that man is? Do you have any idea what it looks like? My wife hanging all over some other man at my own foundation's event." His voice was shaking with rage I'd never heard before. I stared at him, and something inside me turned to ice. Clear, cold, perfect clarity. "You haven't looked at me in 2 years, Christopher. You forgot our anniversary. You moved into a separate bedroom. You introduce me as my wife Diana, like I'm a piece of furniture. But I have one genuine conversation with another human being, and suddenly you remember I exist." He opened his mouth to respond, but I wasn't finished. "I wore this dress tonight, hoping you might actually see me for once. And you didn't. You didn't even really look at me until another man did. So don't you dare act like I'm the one who embarrassed you. You've been making me feel invisible for 2 years." The rest of the ride home was silent. Christopher stared out his window, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite say. I stared out mine, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. Something had broken that night. But it wasn't my heart. It was the chains I'd wrapped around myself, trying to be enough for a man who would never see me. The next morning, Christopher tried to establish new rules. I needed to check with him before going out. I should only attend events he approved. Maybe I should reconsider having lunch with male colleagues from my old research days. He wrapped it all in concern, in protection, in "I'm just worried about you." But I saw it for what it was: control. He didn't want me. He just couldn't stand the idea of anyone else wanting me. I refused every single rule, every suggestion, every attempt to put me back in my box. Instead, I started reclaiming my life, piece by piece. I called my old research mentor, Dr. Patricia Lynn, and asked if she knew of any opportunities. She told me about a biotech startup looking for a consulting researcher for a new pain management study. I took the meeting. I accepted the position. I didn't ask Christopher's permission. I started going out with Tasha again. Long lunches where we laughed until we cried. Coffee dates where I remembered what it felt like to be myself. I joined a professional women's network and went to their monthly dinners. Every time I walked out the door, Christopher's face would tighten with barely concealed jealousy. He'd ask where I was going, who I was meeting, when I'd be back. Not like a concerned husband, like a warden. He started showing up places. At a lunch with my new colleagues, I looked up from my salad to find Christopher at the host's stand, claiming he happened to be in the neighborhood, despite the restaurant being 40 minutes from any of his properties. At a networking event, he appeared with wine and that possessive hand on my lower back, introducing himself to everyone I spoke with like he was marking territory. "I'm protecting you," he'd say when I confronted him. "I'm trying to keep our marriage together. I'm showing you that you matter to me." But I saw the truth. "You're not protecting me, Christopher. You're trying to own me. There's a difference." Everything came crashing down at a dinner party hosted by Christopher's business partner, a sharp woman named Rochelle, who'd always been kind to me in that pitying way that said she knew exactly how neglected I was. We were having wine on her terrace when she made an offhand comment that stopped my heart. "I'm glad Christopher finally ended things with Lauren. I know it was just emotional, not physical. But still, 18 months is a long time to be that close to someone who isn't your spouse." She must have seen my face because hers went pale. "Oh God, Diana, I thought you knew. I assumed, everyone assumed. Lauren, the business associate I'd never met, the woman at all those late-night meetings and weekend strategy sessions, the person who understood the business in a way I apparently couldn't. Not an affair in the traditional sense, but something worse. An intimacy I'd been begging for while he gave it to someone else." I drove home in a daze. Christopher was there, for once, working in his study. I walked in without knocking. He looked up, annoyed at the interruption, and I said, "Tell me about Lauren." I watched the color drain from his face, watched him scramble for words. "Diana, it's not what you think. You gave her everything you wouldn't give me," I said, and my voice was steady, calm. "The attention, the conversation, the time. You made me feel crazy for wanting what you were already giving to someone else. He tried to explain. She understood the pressures of the business. It was never physical. It was just easier to talk to her because she didn't expect anything from him emotionally. With every word, he dug the hole deeper without even realizing it. You didn't want me, I said quietly. But you couldn't stand anyone else wanting me either. I gave up my career for you. I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger. I waited for 2 years for you to choose me, and you were choosing someone else the entire time. Christopher's face changed then. Real panic, maybe for the first time. Diana, please. I'll end it. I'll change. I'll do better. Just don't. Don't what? Don't leave? You had 2 years to choose me, Christopher. You only noticed me when you thought you were losing your trophy. I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on his desk. I'm done being invisible. I'm done waiting for you to see me. I'm just done. The divorce was surprisingly simple. Christopher's lawyers tried to make it complicated, but I didn't want his money, or his properties, or anything except my freedom. I moved into a small apartment that was mine, got back to work with my research team, and slowly remembered who Diana Mitchell was before she became Mrs. Westwood. Christopher didn't take it well. The gifts started arriving. Flowers, jewelry, handwritten letters promising change. He showed up at my apartment building so many times that the doorman started recognizing him. He'd wait in the lobby, hoping to catch me, to talk, to convince me to give him another chance. But I was done talking. I'd spent 2 years trying to get him to listen. Now it was his turn to know what being ignored felt like. 6 months later, I was leading a research team. Again. We were working on something potentially revolutionary, and I felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. My work was featured in pharmaceutical journals. My colleagues valued my input. I mattered because of my mind, my skills, my dedication, not because of whose arm I was on. Then came the Medical Innovation Conference, where I was invited to speak on a panel about breakthrough pain management research. I was backstage reviewing my notes when I saw him, Christopher, in the audience. He'd somehow found out I was speaking. He was watching me with this look of desperate longing that I'd once would have given anything to see. During the Q&A session, I noticed Donovan Hayes in the crowd too. After the panel, he approached me with that same genuine smile. Dr. Mitchell, I was hoping I'd run into you. I'm working with a foundation that funds medical arts initiatives, and I think your research could benefit from some of their grants. Would you be interested in collaborating? We talked for 20 minutes about the project, about possibilities, about work that mattered. It wasn't romantic. It was just two professionals who respected each other. But when I glanced up, Christopher was there, watching us with that same jealous expression that had started all of this. He approached when Donovan stepped away to take a call. Diana, you look incredible. You seem happy. I am happy, I said simply. I miss you. I made a terrible mistake. I see that now. I see you now. His voice cracked with emotion that might have moved me once. Christopher, you don't miss me. You miss having me. There's a difference. I checked my watch. I have people waiting. It was good to see you. I walked away from him without looking back, not with anger or vindictiveness, just with the quiet confidence of someone who finally knows her worth. Behind me, I heard him call my name one more time, but I kept walking, toward my team, toward my work, toward Donovan and the foundation project, toward a future that belonged to me. That dress didn't make Christopher jealous. It reminded me I was worth being jealous over. I'd spent 2 years trying to be enough for someone who had already decided I was too much. The moment I stopped shrinking myself, I became everything I was meant to be. Here's what I learned. Christopher didn't fall back in love with me when he saw another man's attention. He panicked at losing control. Real love doesn't make you invisible. Real love doesn't wake up only when competition appears. Real love sees you on Tuesday morning in your pajamas, not just Saturday night in an emerald dress. The karma? Christopher got exactly what he gave me: loneliness, the emptiness of that beautiful penthouse that was never really a home. He destroyed the only real thing he had because he took it for granted. And me, I'm in my lab right now, leading breakthrough research that might actually change lives. I have colleagues who respect me, friends who cherish me, and most importantly, I have myself back. Here's what I need you to understand. The right person will never make you beg for basic attention. And if someone only wants you when someone else does, that's not love, that's ego. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment telling me what moment hit hardest. Hit that like button if you're Team Diana, and subscribe because we're telling stories about people who chose themselves and won. Remember this: you are not an option, you are not a backup plan, and you are definitely not invisible. The moment you start believing that, everything changes. Trust me, I lived it. See you in the next one.